Ever since last year's rotation, Lugia VSTAR has been a little bit of a shaky deck. Whether it's the single strike build or the colorless build, it hasn't reached the heights of its peak at the Silver Tempest times. Though I admit I really didn't like that and Lugia was way overpowered at the time. However, Lugia post-rotation is looking incredibly strong and might be pushing towards that Silver Tempest era once again. I'm Jet from inthirdperson.com. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let's look over some information, some deck lists from Japan, and some latest tournament results, and see what Lugia has cooking. Just a quick overview on how the deck works. On your first turn, you really need to get down a Lugia V, and before the end of the second turn, you gotta get 2 Archeops in the discard pile. At which point, you'll evolve to Lugia VSTAR, use your Summoning Star ability to get both Archeops from the discard pile onto the bench, and then from there, you use Archeops' ability to just power up a whole assortment of attackers. The million-dollar question is, does Lugia survive rotation? And the answer is yes, and it's actually stronger than it has been in some time. Shoutouts to OmniPoke for putting together this tier list based on tournament results in Japan. There might actually be a newer version of this graphic that has come out since I have done this video. I'm recording this a couple days in advance. However, we can see it has been doing well in Japan as a B tier deck, but I do think that based on these results, this is compiling everything to date since rotation, and Lugia has been on the upswing. We can see this tier list from Pokekabook, where it has moved itself up to the 3rd strongest deck in the game, and I believe this is based on Metashare. Lugia stocks are on the rise in recent times, and it's not hard to see why. Furthermore, the first major tournament has happened in Japan at the Fukuoka Champions League. I believe there's question marks here. I believe the number is over 2,600 players, and Lugia VSTAR comes out on top, beating Arceus Vulpix in grand finals. Why is Lugia back on top? Well, for one, it doesn't have to worry about Path to the Peak shutting off its ability. Yes, there are ways of shutting off abilities such as Flutter Mane, and Iron Thorn's EX is coming soon, but those are a little more situational, and Lugia can get its Summoning Star ability off more consistently. Furthermore, and more importantly, it gets a new attacker in Chinchino, which is an absolute unit, being able to one-shot basically anything in the game if you load up enough energy on there, which is awesome. That being said, there are some problems with the deck that I foresee here. One of them being that Chinchino is an evolution Pokemon, and this is a deck that's already very dependent on having to set up in a specific way. You have to have a Lugia down, you have to get 2 Archeops in the discard pile, you have to evolve Lugia, you also then have to use Summoning Star, and on top of that, you also have to involve Chinchinos along the way. So this is already a deck that can be kind of tough to set up, and it's going to be even tougher now that the Chinchinos are in the mix. And also, you can't negate lightning weakness anymore with Dunsparce, and there are going to be times where you'll want to attack with Lugia and it'll just get blasted, or other times you don't want to attack with Lugia and you're up against a lightning deck and you get blasted. However, Miraidon is not as popular, and it's projecting to be not as popular as it currently is, so maybe lightning weakness isn't going to be as much of a factor, but the fact that you can't negate that lightning weakness is a problem for Lugia in the future. The deck is losing some pretty big pieces. Professor Burnett was one of the best ways to get the Archeops in the discard pile. Unfortunately, we're losing that to rotation. I have just Tyranitar in this graphic. However, the entirety of the single strike package is going away. We're losing Tyranitar, Stonjourner, Urshifu, Duraludon, Single Strike Energy, the Urns of Vitality. All of that stuff is going away. So an entire branch of Lugia decks just disappears. We also lose Dunsparce, which means we can't cover Lugia's lightning weakness, and we are losing Pumpkaboo, which was great for bumping stadiums. However, with no Path to the Peak in the format right now, Pumpkaboo was kind of useless anyway, so not a big deal there. It does gain some massive new cards, including Chinchino, Master Ball, Mist Ball, and Morty's Conviction. Chinchino is very cute and very dangerous. Its special roll attack for 2 colorless energy does 70 damage for each special energy card attached to this Pokemon. With 2 Archeops in play, it's very easy to hit 280 damage, and then you attach a 5th energy from hand, and you are one-shotting everything in the game. Now, the big trade-off here is that Chinchino is an evolution Pokemon, so it's going to be a little harder to set up, but if you can get the Chinchino set up, this becomes an absolute unit. Master Ball has found a home in Lugia VSTAR. Many consider Master Ball to be one of, if not the worst, A-Spec card in the game. However, because Lugia VSTAR is so dependent on getting Pokemon in a specific order, Master Ball becomes a very nice addition to the deck, being able to grab a specific Pokemon that you are looking for from your deck without any downsides. Mist Energy is a great upgrade for Lugia VSTAR, as this energy helps you prevent effects of attacks from your opponent's Pokemon. So this is going to prevent you from getting instant KO'd by Frenzied Gouging on Roaring Moon, or instant KO'd by Lost Requiem, or get damage counters dropped on you by Sableye. So this is going to protect your Pokemon in a great way. Only one of the lists we're going to look at has Morty's Conviction, but it is a nice addition to the deck where it lets you discard a card and then draw a card for each of your opponent's bench Pokemon. Now, oftentimes you're going to want to discard 2 cards to get 2 Archeops in the discard pile, but you don't always have 2 Archeops. So still being able to discard a card and draw upwards of 5 cards is really nice. The first list we are going to look at is a very vanilla Lugia VSTAR list. It's also the list that won the 2024 Fukuoka Champions League. We're going to go through this list a little slower, as I'm going to use this as sort of the template for everything that comes after. And then for the following list, we'll just pick out the specific cards that are different from this base list. We've got a 4-3 line of Lugia VSTAR in order to make sure we can get Lugia on the board. We do have 4 Archeops here. We want to maximize our opportunities to get Archeops in the discard pile. We now have a 3-3 line of Minccino and Chinchino. I'm pretty sure this is the Call for Family Chinchino, which can help to get some basics on the board, and Chinchino becomes our heavy hitter. We are still running 2 Snorlax here with the Unfazed Fat Attack. Helps us deal with single prize decks without having to burn as much energy. We can still attach a double turbo and another special energy, so for 2 attachments, we can still do 160 damage and have a little more of a beefy single prize attacker, which is nice. We only have 1 Lumineon in this deck. Right now, in the international meta, 2 Lumineon is the standard. I think 2 Lumineon still feels good, but this one only has 1 and still won that major tournament, so there's that to consider. For Pokeball search, we've got 2 copies of Great Ball, 4 Ultra Ball, 4 copies of Capturing Aroma, and then 1 copy of Master Ball, so lots of ways of getting our Pokemon in play. 2 copies of Boss for Gusting, 1 copy of Jacques. This is a card that came out in Scarlet and Violet base set. It's one we don't see in competitive play right now, but I have been seeing this card appear more in Japanese lists. It lets you search your deck for 2 evolution Pokemon, reveal them, and put them into your hand, then shuffle your deck. And for Lugia specifically, this can help you get the Chinchinos in play. It can help you get Archeops in order to then discard them, can get you a Lugia VSTAR. Lots of reasons to have Jacques in your hand, so I don't necessarily hate its inclusion here. 3 copies of Iono for hand disruption, 2 copies of Professor's Research to discard our hand and draw 7. We haven't seen Serena in a while. This actually has 2 effects, and you have to choose one of them. You can either gust up a Pokemon V, so it kind of works like a boss's orders, but only on Pokemon V, or you can discard up to, I think it's 3 cards and then draw up to 5. Lets you discard cards and then draw cards as well. So other ways of getting Archeops in the discard pile. For the stadiums, we've got 2 copies of Collapse Stadium, help to bump the Lumineon off the board and also just make our opponent's setup a little more problematic for them. And then we have a ton of special energy here, including 1 V-Guard energy, 3 Mist energy, 4 Jet energy, 4 double turbos, 1... Is that the... I can't even remember what energy that is. I will put the note right here for what that is. And 4 copies of Gift Energy as well. This second example is very similar from the first. I think they're all going to be very similar because the core of the deck is the same. I can see that this one has a 3/3 Lugia, but it also has a Mew EX, which is a very cool attacker in Lugia. I like Mew in the deck a lot, where it has the restart ability, lets you draw up to 3 cards, and then genome hacking as an attack for 3 colorless energy, lets you copy an attack from your opponent's active Pokemon. This can give you a one-hit KO option against Giratina VSTAR, although Cinccino does that at this point, but you could do cool stuff like boss up a Radiant Greninja and then snipe 2 targets for 90 damage apiece by copying Moonlight Shuriken. So really versatile attacker and draw engine in the Lugia deck, so I like its inclusion here. We also see Maximum Belt, which helps you do 50 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon EX. Now, with Cinccino being able to do so much damage, I'm not sure this deck really needs Maximum Belt, especially when Pokemon Search can be kind of tricky for it, but I'm not going to hate against doing 50 more damage against Pokemon EX, which are going to run rampant in the upcoming format. Example 3 still sees the Lugia Archeops with the Cinccino core. This actually leans a little more into the Cinccino with the 4/3 line of Cinccino, but we do see a couple of other single prize attackers in the mix as well. One of those single prize attackers is Luxray, and it's a stage 2 Pokemon that you can cheat into play with Swelling Flash, which allows you to bench it right away if one of your Pokemon was knocked out on the previous turn. And its attack is very nice here. For 1 lightning and 2 colorless, does 180 damage, and you do 20 damage to yourself. We also see Neo Upper Energy in the deck. This is here to power up Luxray, as this only works on stage 2 Pokemon. Now you might be asking, why would you run Neo Upper Energy over Reversal Energy? The problem with Reversal Energy is that you have to have been behind on prizes in order to use it, and Neo Upper Energy does not have that restriction. So even if you're ahead on prizes, you can still use Neo Upper Energy to power up Luxray. Radiant Charizard is also in the deck, giving us a very strong endgame attacker. Its Combustion Blast attack does 250 damage, but keep in mind that we only have Luminous Energy, and all of the other energies are special energy in the deck, so we can't power up Radiant Charizard to attack early in the game. Our opponent has to have taken at least 4 prizes before we can put this into play, so this is something you're not going to want to bench till towards the end of the match. Example 4 includes a wild inclusion of Noivern EX, and we can't use its dominating echo attack because we don't have psychic or dark energy in the deck. However, we can use it for Covert Flight, which for 2 colorless energy does 70 damage, and during your opponent's next turn, prevent all damage done to this Pokemon by attacks from basic Pokemon. This is going to wall off against stuff like Chen Pao and a lot of the new basic decks that are coming out in Temporal Forces. All those Paradox Pokemon are basic Pokemon, and Noivern EX is going to wall them off. So really interesting tech there. This final example does not have the Cinccinos in it. Instead, we see Lugia's old friend Weirdeer in the mix, which is a really interesting inclusion here. I don't necessarily feel comfortable putting all my energy on Weirdeer, but it is a pretty good attacker. Its ability Frontier Road, once during your turn when this Pokemon moves from your bench to the active spot, you may move any amount of energy from your other Pokemon to it. And its Psyshield Bash does 40 damage for each energy attached to this Pokemon. So this does, in theory, have the ability to one-hit KO anything in the game. It also has 220 HP, so it's a little harder to knock out. And with the Hero's Cape giving it plus 100 HP, it could give you a beefy attacker as well. So something to consider. I personally don't like this build very much, but it is a interesting way of playing Lugia VSTAR if for whatever reason you don't like playing the Cinccino line. Maybe you just don't like having to deal with the extra evolutions and you just want to deal with a basic Pokemon like Weirdeer. So definitely something to consider. This is not my favorite way to play Lugia in theory, but I'm willing to try it out. Thus concludes our look at Lugia VSTAR. The deck is looking incredibly strong in the current meta, having a great multi-prize attackers, like the Cinccino can one-shot multi-prize attackers. Snorlax gives you the opportunity to take out single-prize attackers. Lugia itself can be a decent attacker in the deck as well. The deck is looking incredibly strong. I've personally never been the biggest fan of Lugia. You can go back to my older videos and even more recent ones. I just don't like the process of having to get the Archeops in the discard pile and get to Lugia VSTAR and set all that stuff up. However, we definitely will play a bunch of this Lugia going forward because it's shaping up to be incredibly strong, and at the time of this recording, it is on the rise, and maybe it'll be even higher on the charts by the time you see this video. But what say you? Are you excited to see Lugia make a comeback? Let me know in the comments below. But for now, I gotta get going. Thank you so much for watching. You can find me on all the things: YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram at @InThirdPerson. If you want to hang out and see some more post-rotation previews, I have a ton of videos on the channel, so go back through. I've done one for Miraidon, Gardevoir, Charizard, Roaring Moon, Chien-Pao, Arceus, Giratina, Goldango, a whole bunch. So just go back to the channel and you can find a whole bunch more there. You can find me on Twitch at @InThirdPerson, where I stream the Pokemon trading card game every Sunday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. And check out the website, inthirdperson.com, for more articles and videos on video games, board games, and other nerdy pursuits. So until the next one, I'll see you later. Bye-bye.